breaking news this morning. A 21-year-old woman is in custody, arrested after a stabbing rampage in Barnsdale, 3 hours east of Melbourne. Live now to Today Melbourne reporter Isabella Stashkovsky. Four men have been taken to hospital.
They have, Jane. Good morning to you. We know this 21-year-old woman from Ravensthall went on an erratic rampage last night in Bairnsdale, about 3 hours out of Melbourne in the Gippsland region. It all started close to 10 o'clock. She went into a supermarket and she was seen behaving in an erratic manner. She's gone up to a male staff member there and she stabbed him in the stomach. She's then made her way out of that supermarket to the car park of a fast food place. She's asked another man for a lift in his car and then she slashed him as well. She's then made her way to a hotel where she's targeted another man before finally going to a railway station and stabbing another man in the shoulder. Those last three, they all suffered minor injuries. With the first male, the staff member in the supermarket, Jane, he did have serious injuries, non-life-threatening, but he has been taken to hospital. At this point, she is assisting police with their inquiries. It's unclear why she's done this, whether it's linked or it is a random attack. No charges have been laid as of yet.
We have breaking news just in. President Trump's tariffs have been reinstated, at least for the time being, after an appeals court delayed a ruling blocking them.
Let's go live now with US correspondent Reid Butler. Reid, what more can you tell us about this?
Well, guys, the White House had been desperately trying to delay this damning ruling, and just literally in the past few moments, the US Court of Appeal has granted the Trump administration that request. There's been no opinion or reason given for that granting of that request, but we do know that both parties will now have until early next month to hand in their responses to that decision. This comes after two federal courts have now deemed most of Donald Trump's tariffs as illegal. Most significantly, the US Court of International Trade, judges making the decision that a trade deficit does not account for a national emergency, which is the reason Donald Trump gave for introducing these sweeping levies on trading partners. It is important those bans, those illegal tariffs, don't include industry ones affecting steel and aluminium, but they do include the reciprocal tariffs, so Australia is very much impacted here. We know the Australian government is going through the judicial findings very closely and that they maintain that those reciprocal tariffs are unjustified. We did hear from the White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt earlier. She said that the White House was going to fight this in a very big way from a legal perspective. Here she is.
We need to comply with the orders. He's made that very clear, but we're going to fight them in court and we're going to win on the merits of these cases because we know we are acting within the president's legal and executive authorities.
So now it looks like the Trump administration has had at least a minor win after a significant setback. But guys, this legal fight, it is going to drag on and on. It is far from over.
There's been yet another shooting incident that has been reported in the United States at about 8 p.m. local time on Wednesday in Washington, where the police say that 7 people have sustained injuries, 3 of whom are in a critical condition. Now, officers arrived at the scene after a 911 call and an investigation is currently underway. And officials say that about 100 people were present at the park where the shooting took place. The number of shooters involved and also the motive at this moment is yet to be established.
So far, we have not made any connections between the shooters and the victims. If this was something that was targeted, if it was completely random, they're still working through that right now.
The latest incident has occurred just days after a shooting was reported from a park in Philadelphia on Memorial Day. Shooters killed 2 and injured 9 others in that incident on the 26th of May.
This is a guide on what to do in an emergency in Norway. Norwegian authorities posted it to all homes to try to prepare the public for a crisis. Across Northern Europe, governments are warning the continent faces its most serious security situation since World War II due to threats from Russia, including sabotage, arson and cyber attacks and climate change. Norway, Sweden and Finland are increasingly pushing the concept of total defence. It means every part of society has a role to play in national defence, not just the military. This guide asks you to think about various scenarios, like what to do if electricity was cut off for a long time or if the water supply failed. There's also a checklist of essentials: 20 litres of water, 7 days of food per person, and a warning to be aware of misinformation. During a crisis or war in the Nordics, you could also go to a bunker. Finland's shelters can fit more than 85% of its population. Officials say they hope the guides encourage people to think about how to help themselves in the event of a crisis.
A massive glacier collapse in the Swiss Alps has devastated the village of Blatten. Authorities confirm one person is missing, and the village, which is home to around 300 people, now lies buried beneath debris. The disaster struck just after 3:30 local time on Wednesday afternoon when a huge section of the Birch Glacier gave way in the southern canton of Valais. The village had been evacuated last week after experts warned of an imminent collapse, but officials say the missing person, that's a 64-year-old man, was not among those who were evacuated.
Dear people of Blatten, the unimaginable has happened today. We have practically lost the village we see. I am glad that we can evacuate everyone from Blatt and outside and bring them to safety. This gives us the strength to do what lies ahead. We have lost the village, but not the heart.
A dramatic video posted online shows a vast plume of ice and rock and mud roaring down the mountainside, smashing into homes and burying structures in its path. Now, head of the region's Natural Hazards Service called it a worst-case scenario. He says roughly 3 billion cubic meters of material fell, creating a blockage nearly 2 kilometers along the Lonza River. A small lake has already been formed behind it.
Now the worst-case scenario has happened. This means that the 3 million cubic blocks that went onto the glacier all came down with the glacier. This is very, very rare. We cannot find an example in history, but everything has now come down. And we do not know exactly how much material is up there, but most of it has surely come down.
The search and rescue teams were immediately deployed. 3 specialists were airlifted in with drones equipped with thermal cameras scanning the rubble. But so far, the missing man has not been found. In a show of national support, Swiss President Karin Keller expressed her condolences on social media, saying, It's terrible to lose your home. My thoughts are with the residents of Blatten. Now, 2 federal ministers visited the disaster zone. Civil Protection Minister Martin Fitze called the destruction striking, promising long-term support. Environment Minister Albert Rossi said the government will do everything it can to ensure Blatten has a future. This collapse comes amid growing concerns over glacial retreat in the Alps, widely linked to climate change. Swiss glaciers have lost about 10% of their volume in just the last 2 years, melting as much in 2022 and 2023 as they did over the entire 3 decades from 1960 to 1990.
Controversial South African-born billionaire Elon Musk has left United States President Donald Trump's administration. Ahead of the US election, he quickly moved from funder to Trump's close advisor and was rewarded with a 130-day mandate as a special employee with the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. There, he led a tumultuous drive to shrink the size of the government, which saw federal agencies upended and thousands of jobs axed, but ultimately failed to deliver on the savings he said he could achieve. While Musk's role was temporary and therefore his exit expected, it comes a day after he criticised Trump's tax and spending bill, the centrepiece of the president's agenda. Musk said the so-called Big Beautiful Bill was too expensive and would undermine his work at DOGE. His departure was unceremonious. On Wednesday, he took to his social media platform X to thank Trump for his time in the administration.
The US has unreasonably cancelled Chinese students' visas under the pretext of ideology, which has seriously damaged the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese students and disrupted normal cultural exchanges between the two countries. China firmly opposes this and has lodged representations with the US. This politically discriminatory practice by the US exposes the lie of the so-called freedom and openness that the US has always touted and will further damage their own international image and national credibility.
Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes targeted Yemen's Sana'a International Airport on Wednesday, destroying the last operational aircraft of Yemen's flagship carrier and disrupting crucial humanitarian operations. The Houthi leader, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, denounced Israeli airstrikes, calling them an attempt to pressure Yemen into abandoning its stance on the Palestinian cause. Listen in.
Regarding the Israeli aggression on Sana'a airport today, which comes within the context of the ongoing Israeli aggression targeting our nation in Palestine, Lebanon and Syria, it also aims, concerning our country, to pressure the honorable stance of our dear people and our nation's principled position in supporting the oppressed Palestinian people.
The Israeli military says the strike was a direct response to missile launches by Houthi forces the previous day. It added the destroyed aircraft was used by the Houthis in operations against Israel. On May 6, Israeli airstrikes destroyed 3 aircraft in a separate attack, bringing the total number of aircraft lost to 4. The runway, only recently repaired, is again out of service. The Houthis remain undeterred in their support to Palestinians, but added Israel may attempt to hinder the transportation of pilgrims for the Hajj pilgrimage.
The Israeli enemy may include trying to hinder the transportation of pilgrims for the Hajj pilgrimage. However, God willing, they will fail in all of this. Our stance remains steadfast. The repeated restoration of the airport is necessary to ensure the continuation of operations, whether for transporting pilgrims, patients, or travelers.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, meanwhile, has vowed to continue striking back as long as the Houthi forces keep launching attacks on Israel.
The state of Israel has again approved the construction of 22 new illegal Jewish settlements in the occupied Palestinian lands of West Bank. A move that has drawn some praise from the extreme right-wing elements within the state of Israel and condemnation from independent human rights and foreign governments. Now, taking to social media, the far-right finance minister of the state of Israel, Bezalel Smotrich, made the announcement. Now, according to the Israeli media, the plan includes the legalization of unauthorized illegal settler outposts and the establishment of new communities, that is, Israeli communities in the Palestinian lands of the northern West Bank. The decision is likely to further entrench the Israeli presence in the occupied Palestinian territory that Palestinians are seeking as part of a future state. An estimated 700,000 illegal Israeli settlers live amongst 2.7 million Palestinians in the Palestinian land of the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The approval for the settlements comes just days after 8 Western nations, that is, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, Australia, Japan, Spain and New Zealand, announced coordinated sanctions against Israeli settlers and organizations that are involved in West Bank violence. The sanctions include travel bans and asset freezes targeting individuals accused of attacking the Palestinians and also destroying their property.
Since the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel, the United States delivered more than a plane load of weapons and munitions to Israel every day. In addition to the more than 800 plane loads of equipment and munitions, the U.S. also delivered more than 140 shiploads of equipment as well to its closest Mideast ally. Israel's Ministry of Defense says the more than 90,000 tons of equipment and supplies from the U.S. includes armored vehicles, large munitions, small arms ammunition, personal protective gear, and medical equipment. The IMOD said in a post on its Facebook page, the deliveries represent a significant component for the IDF to ensure continued operations, both for achieving the war objectives and for improving readiness and stockpiles. Right from the start of the conflict, sparked on October 7th, 2023, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his country was fighting a multi-front war against Iran's axis of resistance, which includes Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Netanyahu maintains the war against Hamas will only end once all the hostages still held in Gaza are released. And the terrorist group is beaten back enough so that it can never hold power in Gaza again, either militarily or politically. In the early days and months of the fighting in Gaza, most of the international community was behind Israel and its right to defend itself. A lot of that support is starting to wane, though. Even Germany, one of Israel's strongest supporters behind the United States, is reassessing its arms shipments to Israel as a result of the growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where 90% of the population was forced to flee their homes. UK Red Cross says around 470,000 people are currently facing starvation. And in what could be seen as the biggest public split between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump told a group of reporters he had warned the Israeli Prime Minister not to strike Iran or its nuclear sites, while Tehran and Washington were engaged in talks aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear program. The president quickly walked that statement back, though, explaining he told the Israeli leader striking Iran would be, quote, inappropriate to do right now because the two sides are very close to a solution. The New York Times reported Netanyahu was threatening to disrupt the nuclear talks by striking Iran's main nuclear enrichment facilities. The newspaper also cited anonymous officials within the Israeli government saying there are growing concerns President Trump is so motivated to get a deal done with Iran, he may allow them to keep their uranium enrichment programs in operation. That has long been a red line for Israel. For its part, the Israeli government is denying the New York Times reporting, calling it fake news. More unbiased.
And today in Canada, smoke, flames, and fear. That's the reality tonight for thousands of Canadians as wildfires rage across Manitoba and Alberta. In fact, more than 17,000 people have been forced to flee their homes as blazes tear through forests and communities. And what officials are calling one of the largest evacuations in its history. In fact, entire towns are being emptied, military planes are being deployed, and families are packing up with no idea when or even if they'll return home. We take you to the Great White North with more on this devastating story.
Another 200-300 feet north, it would have burned the whole place.
Canada is once again in the grip of a ferocious wildfire season. And this year, Manitoba is bearing the brunt of the fury. The province has declared a state of emergency and has ordered evacuations of more than 17,000 residents from its northern and eastern regions. This is the largest evacuation Manitoba will have seen in most people's living memory, said Premier Wab Kineau in a solemn news conference. He further added, it will require significant resources and cooperation from all levels of government.
We will get through this difficult period, and we'll get through this trying period the way that we always do, by working together.
The situation escalated so rapidly that authorities requested military assistance, including aircraft, to help with evacuations and firefighting efforts. Community centers and soccer fields in Winnipeg and other cities are now being prepared to house the displaced as people scramble to flee with children and pets. Residents fleeing the fires painted a harrowing picture of life on the fire line. Some said that the flames were shooting over 121 feet. Firefighters couldn't even get close enough to do anything. One resident said, and I quote, "This is definitely nerve-wracking. The only highway out was jammed and the petrol stations had already run out of gas." The fires have already scorched nearly 200,000 hectares of forest in Manitoba this month alone, 3 times the annual average over the last 5 years. Officials say that 22 fires are currently burning and conditions are growing worse due to prolonged periods of warmth and dryness. Meanwhile, in neighbouring Alberta, wildfires are also raging and have prompted evacuations and industrial shutdowns. Wildfires near Chipewyan Lake have already covered nearly 2,900 hectares. Residents were put on a 1-hour evacuation alert as shifting winds raised fears of sudden danger. There are 134 wildfires active across the country in provinces including British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Ontario and Alberta. Half of them are out of control. The destruction has already claimed lives. Earlier this month, 2 people in Lac du Bonnet died after being trapped by a fast-moving blaze. In 2023, Canada's worst wildfire season on record, the only recorded fatalities were among firefighters. Communities across Manitoba, including Lynn Lake, Marcel Colomb First Nation and Pelican Narrows in Saskatchewan, have seen more than 5,000 residents evacuated in recent days. As Canada stares down another potentially record-breaking wildfire season, experts warn that these crises may become the new normal. For thousands of Canadians who are now on the move, the wildfire crisis isn't just a headline, it's their reality. And as flames threaten communities from coast to coast, the country faces a stark reminder. Adaptation is no longer a choice, but a necessity.